Hey YouTube, it's Twa-na with Destiny Education's Guiding Principles Bible Study. So excited to be here with you tonight. And actually, to be live with you is even more exciting, especially being as it's been such a long time. It feels like since we were able to kind of sit back and chat with one another. So, listen, we got a lot to talk about tonight. There's a lot that's going on in the world, as always, but I wanted to really bring something to you. You know, on this channel, what you get is you get the unedited version of the Bible. It is not decorated for anybody, it's not brought to you in a way that is designed to benefit one person over another. It's the word. It's a lot of it comes from the Greek, a lot of it comes from the Hebrew. And while numerous people will try and tell you, hey, listen, the Bible is up to interpretation, God is very clear that there's no private interpretation. And so when you go and you take his sword, it is, and the sword, of course, is the word, right? You really have to study and know, and you've got to go before him, and you have to wait on your answers to come. And so, as I've been working on this study, one of the things that I want to bring is something that so many people have gotten wrong. And the value of this, for those of you who actually take this and chew on it and do your own research, is absolutely and completely freeing. And that's the thing that we are always searching to do. When Jesus brought me into his kingdom, when he showed me his Bible, when he took me through, he gave me a complete freedom that I had never known. And so my goal is always to bring you a complete freedom with the Bible. And so we're going to start talking about a very hot topic tonight. And that hot topic, of course, is the role of women and the role of men, more specifically as they relate to each other. I felt that it was timely because of what we're dealing with the election, but I need some things prefaced before we begin, a disclaimer, if you will. I'm not some liberal who has a problem with men having headship or being in control of a family. I understand clearly why God set it up that way. As a male, you are responsible for everything that happens in your household. And as a female, you begin to bear burden when you decide you're going to act in rebellion to that head. But here's what often happens. In order for you as a man to effectively guide your household, you have to first be surrendered to Jesus. If you are not surrendered and walking with the king, then you can't keep being angry at your woman if she's not following your instructions. Because without you being surrendered to him, there's nobody to keep that line in your house. And so, what then ends up happening is that as a man, you sit back and you go, she's not doing she. And you end up stepping right back into the role that Adam played when Eve ate of the fruit. And so tonight we're going to come out of Luke chapter 24 and we're going to go verses 10 through 39. But before we get there, I want to go someplace else, and that's to Genesis 3 and 6. It's Genesis 3, 6a. Now, tonight I don't have my video editor, so I'm not going to be able to put it up on the screen for you, but we will read it. And I ask you to forgive me because I don't have my glasses with me. So that was not fun. I don't know how I forgot them, but I did. So let's start here. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat. Now here's the thing that I want you to understand about this. Adam was standing right there. So when you look at this, here's what I want you to understand. If when Eve turned to give Adam the fruit, Adam had said, now Eve, I told you we're not supposed to do this. So we need to go and ask God how to deal with this situation. And he turned around and he called out to the father. You would have seen him come lickety split. Had Adam made that choice, all of us would have been protected, and the serpent would have been the only one who could have suffered by God's law a consequence. Now, why do people have such a problem with this? Well, number one, they don't like to take responsibility. Number two, it's much easier to blame the woman and to make her the problem. Can we talk about something on the real tip? There's a lot of men who have very skewed perceptions and understandings of sex. Between a husband and wife, the marriage bed is undefiled. If the two of you come together and you want to role play and you want to pretend to be different people and you want to play in swings, no harm, no foul. There's only one thing that is not authorized by the Father, and that's sodomy. Even in the marriage bed, sodomy is a no can do. It's not designed for that. It brings about health issues. And if you really want me to go into an elaborate explanation of what that means, let me know and I'll do it in another video. I'll probably put it on a private page because, YouTube gets pretty touchy about certain subjects. But I don't want you to be in a place where you don't understand something and you don't have somebody to ask, because too many people exhaust me with their lack of understanding of the word. It is really easy to sit back and blame the female. But the reason that they blame the female is because they're so addicted to females. And these are corrupted and broken men. The men who feel that it's appropriate to rape. Recently, I was watching a video and I was doing research first because for many of you, we have a political channel. I was doing some research for that and I happened across this video where they were showing a testimonial of somebody who had been going through the election tampering that's going on right now in our country. And these two guys who support the conservative ticket said to her that they hoped that she was raped and impregnated and forced to carry that baby and raise it for the rest of her life. Who says that? Do you know the level of depravity you have to have in your mind to even think that that's an appropriate comment to make? We're not talking about societal norms. We're talking about you just wished that someone was violated. They like to bring up Deuteronomy. So let's talk about Deuteronomy as a side note, and then we're going to go back to tonight's thing. In Deuteronomy, if a man raped a woman and she screamed out, you do realize he was killed. So what those men just did was open themselves up for death. This is why it is so important that you have a true understanding of what the Bible says, because otherwise you end up angry about stuff that doesn't require you to be angry. You're wasting your life because you're not hurting the other person, you're hurting yourself. And so these things are just appalling and unnecessary, but I want you to understand them and to know that it doesn't have to be this way. You can have a true and genuine understanding and not have to live in the darkness of what God is saying. So when we go through Luke 24, 10 through 39, we're going to go through it certain verses at a time. I'm not going to have you read each and every one as much as I would like to because of time constraints. But if we go through it step by step, I want to make sure you see something. Because in order to see that Eve was not the one who was responsible for the fall of humanity, Adam was, because Eve was convinced, she was beguiled, she was swooned, she was overtaken. Adam chose. That's why the serpent didn't go to him first, Because if the serpent had gone to him, he would have just said no. He had to have the woman because it is through consummation that men are so drawn to women, which is why he had to first go through the woman. So here we go. In Luke 24, here's what we're talking about. This is after Jesus has come off the cross. His body was taken by one of the religious leaders of the time who was not part of this nightmare. He went to Pilate, asked him for the body of Jesus so he could have a proper burial. He buried him within a tomb. They rolled the rock in front of it. And now Jesus has risen, which, by the way, the Bible clearly states that he rose on the first day of the week. Sunday is the first day of the week. And so I want you to understand that it wasn't like it happened on a Friday and he rose on a Sunday. It could only have happened on a Thursday and then he rose on a Sunday. Now, ready? And they remembered his words and returned from the sepulchre and told all these things unto the 11 and to all the rest. Now, just to remind you, there's now 11 disciples because Judas was the 12th and he's taken his life. It was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James. That's Jesus, the woman through whom Jesus came, who's now the mother of James, for those of you who've forgotten, and other women that were with them, which told these things unto the apostles. Okay? First, I want you to understand something. At the time that this happened, it was not customary for women to bear witness. They could not bear witness because their word was not believed. So if their word was not believed, why did Jesus use them? I want to show you something before I answer that. And their words seemed to them as idle tales, and they believed them not. What did I just tell you Jesus knew? You heard me. Then arose Peter and ran into the sepulchre, and stooping down, he beheld the linen clothes laid by themselves, and departed, wondering in himself at that which was come to pass. Let's stop right there. It is not uncommon that when women come to you and they try to tell you things, you don't believe them. You see, this hurts you. It hurts your relationship with your wives, your daughters, your female friends, your female coworkers, because you naturally send off a message that they don't know what they're doing. You're discounting all the different places in the Bible where women clearly knew what they were doing. One of them is in Proverbs 31 when he talks about the wife of noble character. You see, there is a pride and an arrogance that exists inside of men because of the things they have experienced growing up. Number one, you had an overbearing mother, which would have you go one of two ways. Either you become subdued and really easy to control, or you become just rebellious, okay? Next, you had an overbearing father, or you had an abusive father. Either way, observing your father abusing your mom in the sense of physical, verbal, emotional, calling you out of your name, calling you out of your name, brothers, sisters, whomever. What that did was it taught you how to interact with females from a very young age. And so many of you, instead of walking away, chose to stay in that spot. Number three, you saw people handle things through the consumption of alcohol or other substances. This is another thing that destroys your ability to accurately see how God created women. Listen, while women were designed to be a helpmeet to men, I want you to remember that they were first designed to be that helpmeet. God can't send you a helpmeet to help you build your kingdom and she's not able to think her way out of situations. So, what makes you choose this self fulfilling prophecy of women who can't think their way out of situations? When you find that in a person, that is a personal choice that you yourself are making. And it's something that you really want to think about because when you have women who are capable, you insult them and you push them away when you do not respect what they have to say. When instead of being able to have a reasonable adult conversation, you become a child, all you do is put them in a place where they get quiet. And as they get quiet, let me tell you what they're doing. They're planning their escape. They're planning for the day when they no longer have to deal with you. This is something that you want to understand. This is what this part of the word is also just explaining to you. These women were capable. They didn't need a man to go and do what needed to happen. It wasn't, that's not an attack against you as a man. What I'm telling you is that they are capable of making decisions. God chose them as the witness to support that he has value in women having leadership positions. You can be a woman and be a leader. It is just because the household is run with the husband at the top doesn't mean that your wife doesn't have the right to lead. There are other places in her life she's going to lead. When she's building her own business, when she's running her own projects, she will lead. What I love about this is that he tells you straight out, I, the father, don't have a problem with women bearing witness. But humans in their life have these preconceived issues. You know, I want to address a comment actually that just came up. She's going to lead the children and teach them. That actually is not biblical. Biblically speaking, it was the father who raised the children, not the mother. And it was the father who educated them. It was the father who led them and taught them. The mothers were there to help the daughters learn how to cook, because usually that wasn't the requirement of the male. But for the most part, when it came to educating the children, it was the fathers who did that. It was not the mothers. Mothers had a very different role at the time, and their role was no less valuable and important. But the father, it was so important that you led the children. And it's actually really interesting because if you look at research today, what you find is that children do better in single father households than they do in single mother households. The design of you as a man works whether you have a female child or a male child. The bond that you create with that child, they have a greater respect for you. I would love to tell you how and why that is. I have not had the time to study it to the level that I would like to. So I would only be able to come to you with hypothesis, and I don't want to do that. I only want to come to you when I know the facts. Are you with me? So I want you to understand that no, women were not designed to just teach the kids. It was fathers who did both male and female children. And that's important because oftentimes you will downplay your role in the life of your children. But it's you who makes or breaks how they turn out. It's you who sets the stage and says, you're going to be okay. If you're a man who crumbles and falls apart, you're going to have children who crumble and fall apart. And here's how it will work: your sons will crumble and fall, and your daughters will stand strong. Because what you do when you are a man who cannot stand is that you teach your daughters that they don't like weak men, and you teach your sons that they are supposed to be weak men. It's amazing how this plays itself out. It is very important that you, as a father, learn how to overcome the challenges that you faced so that you don't pass them on to the next generation. These men who received that feedback from those women had no reason to believe that what they were telling them was the truth. But they had seen so much. During Jesus's time, let me tell you some of the things they saw. They saw Moses and Elijah at the Mount of Transfiguration. They saw Jesus heal people, remove demons. They bore witness to so much. And what ends up happening? They forget. That's why we build an altar to the Father. There was no reason that they shouldn't have remembered. So, I'm going to take you to another part. We're going to jump over to Luke 24 and 25. Then he said unto them, O fools, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Ought not Christ to have suffered these things and to enter unto his glory? That's Jesus talking. Because he got irritated. Let me tell you why. Because his disciples were sitting up there running their mouths, saying ridiculousness, talking about, oh, they didn't know what they were talking about. I don't know how we got confused. They said they were angry, and they were going through all this doubt, all this unbelief, and Jesus was disgusted. Because when you know the truth, when you hear the truth and you know the truth, that's the problem. You see, let me say that again. When you hear the truth, if you're really of him, you should know the truth. At this season right now, as we're going through this election, there's so many pastors out there telling you to go for someone who is a known rapist, who has gone out of his way to badmouth people that he has done harm to. He lies every time he opens his mouth. There's all this stuff that is evidence that he is not qualified to handle certain things within the United States, and they're out there pushing him. And they're saying that it's because of God. But all the things that I've just listed off are things that by God disqualify him. And so here becomes the problem. When you are dealing with religious people, you have to be very careful, because here's what happens. Religious people do not recognize Jesus when they see him. Let's go back. And it came to pass, as he sat at meat with them, he took bread and blessed it and brake and gave to them. And their eyes were opened, and they knew him, and he vanished out of their sight. And they said to one another, did not our heart burn within us while he talked with us by the way, and while he opened up to us the scriptures? And they rose up the same hour and returned to Jerusalem, and found the 11 gathered together, and them that were with them. Here's the problem. If you do not recognize Jesus when he shows up on the scene, then you ain't of him. You know, people always think that once they're saved, they don't have to, they can't go to hell. But here's the thing. Only one person knows whether or not your conversion was real. One person, and that's your Father. Sometimes when you are walking with him, here's some of the things that happen. You have to question whether or not your conversion was real, because you see things that you've never seen before. And so as he proves to you, because that's what he'll do, he will show you that he is really with you. As he shows you these things, if you don't believe him, then you have to question whether or not you are of him. And somebody coming along and stealing what he gives you, yeah, that says a lot about you and where you're standing. Now, while there's 17 million other things that I would love to talk about with this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start wrapping up. And what we're going to do is next week we're going to come back and we're going to go through this some more. Because what I want you to see is that what Jesus is showing us in this passage is that as men, one of the biggest things that you struggle with is believing the Lord when he shows up. And you will drop the ball. You'll stop doing something. You will need, I'm sorry, I got distracted by a comment. Let me go back. It's vitally important that you understand that the Father comes for you to be free. And when you choose not to believe that he is who he tells you he is, that's a problem. And it says a lot about you and where you're at. You see, in these verses, Jesus has shown us women are perfectly capable of leading, including an entire country. They are not the reason that men fell. Men are the reason that our society fell. And it was because they were more concerned about what they wanted. In this case, they equals Adam. Adam was more concerned about what he wanted than he was about what was best for everyone in the situation. When you are reading the Bible, remember this. Jesus is not solely concerned for you and yours. He's concerned about the community around you. As you begin to be more concerned with those around you, you will begin to see more of Jesus showing up in your life every single day of the week. I hope that you'll ponder that tonight and you'll really chew on it. And next week, we will finish up this Bible study and we'll go through all the rest of the scriptures to show you exactly how he made sure that both men and women could work together to lead. There is one last thing I want to bring you before we close, and that's this. Men are the leaders of the household for this reason. At the end of the day, somebody has to be able to say, I did this, I chose this, here's why I chose this. Okay? And you are the one, as a gentleman, who will stand before God and you will take responsibility, whether you want to or not, for how you ran your household. I want you to chew on that. Because every time you look down on the females in your life, is the more you do damage to yourself. And it's so funny when I watch, funny in the sense of ironic, when I watch men whose lives are falling apart, they can't seem to get it together. And then I see how they treat the women in their life, and I completely understand. You can tell how a man treats his females just by watching how his life plays out. I'm going to run for tonight. I hope you have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.